Imagine watching your world go up in smoke as the great temple of Jerusalem crumbles into ash. For the ancient Israelites, this wasn't just a military defeat, it was a total collapse of their reality and the start of a 70-year struggle for survival. How did a displaced nation maintain its identity against the world's most powerful empires? This is the story of a people who lost everything, only to find that their story was being written by a hand they couldn't see, long before the crisis even began. The fall of the kingdom was not a sudden accident, but the result of a catastrophic strategic blunder by King Zedekiah. Despite repeated warnings from the prophet Jeremiah that the Babylonian storm was coming, the Judean leadership chose rebellion over repentance. In 586 BCE, the inevitable happened. The Babylonian army breached the walls of Jerusalem. The city was systematically dismantled, and the crown jewel of Israel, Solomon's temple, was burned to the ground. This was a psychological trauma unlike any other, because for the Israelites, the temple was the perceived dwelling place of God on earth. When the fires died down, they weren't just mourning a building, they were wondering if God had abandoned them forever. The survivors didn't get to stay and mourn. They were forced on a brutal march across the desert. The Judean elite, the thinkers, the leaders, and the craftsmen were chained and taken as captives to the heart of the Babylonian Empire. This displacement set the stage for a life of exile, where every day was a battle to remember who they were in a land that wanted them to forget. They were surrounded by foreign gods, strange languages, and an imperial culture that seemed to prove their god had been defeated. Yet it was in this exact state of biological and national depletion that the character of God began to be revealed in ways they never understood in the safety of the palace. The problem was clear: a nation without a land, a people without a temple, and a future that looked like a dead end. They were living in the woe that the prophet Isaiah had described years earlier, a state of being completely undone. But the promise given to them was that this 70-year captivity was not an end, but a transformation. The prophets began to draw a portrait of hope that didn't depend on their current strength, but on a divine plan that was already in motion. They were told that the same God who saw a slave woman named Hagar in the wilderness was taking them into account even when they felt invisible in Babylon. To understand how they survived, we have to look at the Bible inside the Bible, the book of Isaiah. Its 66 chapters mirror the structure of the entire canon, starting with 39 chapters of judgment that matched their current reality of exile. But then, at the exact seam of the scroll, the tone shifts from judgment to a profound, deep breath of comfort. They were promised that the exile was not the final chapter because the God they served was Yahweh Shammah, the God who is there even in the middle of a burnt-out city or a foreign labor camp. The first step in their return involves one of the most shocking prophecies in history. Writing nearly 2 centuries before the event, Isaiah named a specific man who would be their deliverer. He called him Cyrus. At the time of the writing, the Persian Empire hadn't even risen, and the Babylonian Empire hadn't yet fallen, but the script was already written. Cyrus was a pagan king, yet God called him his shepherd and his anointed. When Cyrus the Great finally conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, he wasn't just another conqueror. He was a man stepping into a role that had been carved out for him 150 years before he was born.
According to historical tradition, when Cyrus was shown the Hebrew scroll of Isaiah and saw his own name written there, he was seized with an ambition to fulfill the prophecy. He didn't just let the Israelites go, he issued a decree for them to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. He even provided the resources for the work, proving the name Yahweh Jireh, the Lord who provides, by placing the provision in the thicket long before the people arrived at the crisis. The return wasn't a single event, but a series of waves led by leaders like Ezra and Nehemiah. When the first group arrived back in Jerusalem, they found a city that was a ghost of its former self. The walls were in bad shape, and the people were discouraged. A scribe named Ezra took on the task of teaching the people to once again obey the laws they had forgotten in exile. Meanwhile, Nehemiah arrived with a specific mission to rebuild the walls and restore the city's security. They worked with a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other, facing opposition from every side. They were learning that peace is not the reward you get at the end of the fight, but the foundation you stand on while you're in the middle of it. The insight we gain from this timeline is that God reveals His character through specific human emergencies. The names of God, the Creator, the Provider, the Healer, and the Shepherd, were not revealed in a classroom, but in the middle of battles, exiles, and depletions. The captivity wasn't a sign of God's absence, but a setup for a deeper revelation of His presence. It taught a displaced nation that they didn't need a building to have a God. They needed to abide or stay connected to the source, like a branch to a vine. The fruit of their survival was the result of belonging, not performing.
This journey from 586 BCE to the rebuilding of the Second Temple is the ultimate proof that the page you were standing on was written a long time ago. If a Persian king could read his own name on a scroll and change the course of history, it means the God who saw Israel in Babylon sees you in your current struggle. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, who sees the outcome of your life before you even reach your worst day. The exile ended not because the people were strong enough to break their chains, but because the one who is existence itself entered their story and moved the hearts of kings to bring them home. If this timeline of the Israelite captivity opened the Bible in a new way for you today, there is one thing you can do to help others find this story. Hit the subscribe button and leave a comment telling us which part of this history hit you the hardest. Was it the naming of Cyrus or the vision of the God who stays in the ruins? Share this video with someone who feels like they are in their own season of exile and needs to know that their last chapter doesn't have to be their worst chapter. We depend on you to spread the word, and we'll see you in the next deep dive into the stories that change the world.